Competitive Smash is like if you fed Street Fighter into the machine that makes fruit roll-ups. All the ingredients are technically still there, but they've been twisted into something horrifying, and that's why we love it. Smash has lots of crazy vertical stuff like platforms and double jumps, but in Street Fighter you fight on a more horizontal surface, like a street, for example. Now, historically, people have tended to stick to their own fighting game subgenre. I myself have an unholy amount of hours in Smash, yet I could never really get into traditional fighting games. But then I tried Street Fighter 6, and immediately I could tell something was different. Everything just felt more complete, more modern, and for some reason it stuck for me in a way that's making me enjoy this genre so much more than I ever did before. So today, let's talk about what I think makes Street Fighter 6 so great, even if your biggest attachment to this guy is watching him get camped by Steve Minecraft. On this quest for game design strength, we'll look at modes, mechanics, why I play on gaming mouse, and finally we'll ask the burning question: are Smash and Street Fighter really that different after all? Yes, they are. First up is World Tour, which is Street Fighter 6's new, fancy, open-world story mode. Now, fighting game story modes don't exactly have the best reputation, and that's because they all suck. Except, of course, for my favorite one and your favorite one, those are good. But yeah, any multiplayer game with a dedicated following can get away with a single-player mode that doesn't quite stand on its own. Which makes me sad, because especially for sweaty competitive titles, these modes can do so much more. A well-designed campaign can show new players what your game is all about, and teach them the competitive basics without it ever feeling like work. And my favorite example of this is Smash Ultimate's genius World of Light mode. Nah, I'm just kidding, it's Titanfall 2. That game is a competitive first-person shooter where you run on walls and shoot stuff, but the single-player campaign works great on its own as this awesome robot buddy cop story with great characters and action and lots of explosions, and along the way, you're also learning all these important skills you need to actually get out there and start fighting other players. Well, with Street Fighter 6, Capcom really decided to go all in on this in a way I've never seen a fighting game do before. The plan was simple: make a very stupid open world, a very stupid character creator, and then while you're jingling those keys in front of new players' faces, you secretly teach them how to do Street Fighter stuff with cleverly designed minigames. It's a noble idea for sure, but does it actually work? That's a great question.
I told you, I can't play around like you.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. Love the sound, love the graphics, I can attach gloves to my character's face, and I think I probably learned something about special inputs, maybe. Story-wise, I am glad Capcom recognized that dumping decades of mandatory Street Fighter lore on new players would be like showing a Phase 5 Marvel movie to a Victorian child. So instead, they're like, we made it fun to punch people, go out and punch people, that's the story. My only complaint is that it can feel unrealistic. For example, this place is supposed to be New York, but when you wave to people, they wave back. That would never happen in real life. So, getting into the actual fighting game part of this fighting game, I was surprised how much I enjoyed it right off the bat, and I think that's because I'm a big fan of strong, universal mechanics in games, when there's sort of a core toolkit every character has that all their unique stuff is balanced around. It just feels healthy to me when any given problem can be solved by any character. And more importantly, I like it when I press a button and the guy lights up like Goku and does something cool. Well, here in Street Fighter 6, everyone gets this cool glowy green drive rush dash, and also you can parry, and when you do that you glow blue. It's very cool. But coming from Smash, the most surprising and fun one was the terrifying armored drive impact attack. Street Fighter was like, here is a button that you press to do this giant attack, and it goes like, and if they mash on you, they die. And all I want to say is that, God, I wish I could drive impact Steve so bad you have no idea. If I could drive impact him, maybe I wouldn't have had to play him. Anyway, all these universal mechanics, as well as your fancy powered-up overdrive moves, are tied to this one drive meter, which I think is a very elegant system for all skill levels. It gives you tons of strategies around managing resources and even attacking your opponent's meter directly, but at the same time, it's always easy to read for new players, which is important since even a great game can scare people off if the UI looks like an airplane cockpit. Now, I will say that meter management is still definitely the hardest thing for me personally. You know the marshmallow test, where you take a kid and tell them they can have one marshmallow now, or wait a few minutes and get 2 marshmallows? Every time I play Street Fighter, I'm like the kid that failed the marshmallow test in the first 5 seconds. I want to use the cool glowy moves all the time, regardless of the consequences later. And for people like me, you have burnout, also known as the village pillory, where you spend 20 seconds reflecting on the consequences of your stupid actions and realizing you could have had 2 marshmallows before you proceed to immediately fail the test again and get 0 marshmallows forever. But all these mechanics really do come together to create a system that feels complete, with so much room for self-expression. You have a whole lot of tools, but every tool also has a whole lot of counters. And because those tools feel so powerful and visually distinct, and also because you learn the basics of those tools while you punch random people on the street and world tour, newcomers don't have to spend that much time suffering before reaching the fun part of fighting games. Which is, well, it's hard to describe the fun part with words, but it's sort of like a version of rock, paper, scissors, except you're playing it with both hands at once while playing tic-tac-toe, and also your opponent can decide to throw a pie at your face at any time, which beats rock, paper, and scissors and wins tic-tac-toe, but also you have an anti-pie force field, which you can deploy at any time, but get this, the anti-pie force field makes it harder to win at rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, so fighting games are sort of like that, and this is a fun one. And don't get me wrong, as a Smash player, I still don't have anywhere near all the muscle memory to play Street Fighter 6, but I'm still having a blast. Especially because I have a certain, highly controversial partner in crime. Yup, it's time to talk about modern controls. Modern controls are a simplified control scheme, where instead of doing the classic fighting game special move inputs, you can, in Capcom's words, unleash special moves with a single button press to enjoy the feel of combat quickly. There are big drawbacks like reduced damage on easy input attacks and losing access to your full moveset, but modern controls have still caused a bit of drama, with some Street Fighter veterans sort of understandably yelling "get off my lawn" at all the TikTok dancing zoomers chucking out one-button supers. Now in my case, not only do I play Smash, I play it on this thing, so I literally do not think I can be more biased towards whack control schemes. There is not a way for me to even pretend to be objective here. So with that in mind, I will say that modern controls are the best thing ever. First off, there's the accessibility angle. Check out this great Steam review from a person with nerve damage who finally gets to enjoy fighting games. But even if you're physically able to do special inputs, maybe even good at them, these controls are truly a wild experience that I think you really can't miss out on. If you play a character who doesn't lose important moves on modern, it's weird. So here's my final control setup. It took a bit of revision, but I think it's pretty good. And yes, I primarily play on gaming mouse. Twitter tried to tell me not to, but I knew that if my mouse can beat the Minecraft Ender Dragon, then my mouse can beat that gold rank McDonald's Wi-Fi Ken player. The only problem is that every time I click to attack, it makes the mouse pointer appear on screen now. Capcom, please fix this for your 3 gaming mouse players, it would make us very happy. But basically, regardless of what people say about what control style or controller is optimal and superior, just play the way that's most comfortable for you, which for a lot of Smash players, yes, will be modern controls and whatever device you have on hand. Except for the GameCube controller. Don't even try that, Smashers, that is a tendinitis machine that needs to burn in controller hell. Anyway, there's a lot of great guides on modern controls, so I won't get too far into the details, but basically the most important thing to know is that you have a special button that works like Smash, and you can press it with another button to get instant super moves. For context, these normally need a long super input that takes a bit of time, even for seasoned Street Fighter veterans, but with modern, you more or less just skip all that in exchange for a slight damage nerf, which I think is incredibly funny. To be clear though, if you do decide to use modern controls, if it's possible, you absolutely should aim to learn all your special move inputs anyway. Learning the inputs gives you access to more moves and makes them stronger. So there are a bunch of important combos you can't do without learning inputs even on modern, and it's definitely implemented in an interesting way. But I think modern controls are very cool and still very misunderstood. Because a common opinion I see is that modern controls are a stepping stone to classic controls. But I think that's only true in the sense that walking up to a door and punching it into splinters with your fist is a stepping stone to using the doorknob, which is to say, I guess it kinda gets you to the same place, but really this is a whole different thing that's way more stupid but also awesome. You see, thanks to instant supers and specials, modern controls turns you into some kind of online play cryptid with low damage but also the most messed up turbocharged Red Bull gamer reactions in Street Fighter history. And you'll want to play into this. For example, I main Luke, who is actually the game's built-in TikTok dancing zoomer, and that's why I use his default skin and color with no profile customization and my first name as my tag. The goal is to make people think that I just spawned in from the ether together with the sole purpose of reacting to every possible action they take with the super move where Luke shouts "Beast Mode, baby," and then goes Beast Mode. And that plays into what I consider the psychological benefits of modern controls. Cause listen, when you're learning Street Fighter, the road is a long one. I've been grinding my ass off to climb out of Weenie Hut Juniors, but even with the amazing training features, which we'll get to, it simply takes hours and hours of repetition to learn these things. And in your head, you can know that this process takes time and maybe even get a good mindset about it. But nobody's perfectly zen, right? I am gonna suffer mentally when this angry Brazilian carrot monster hurls himself at me for the 10th time in a row. And that's why I think it's good to have a back pocket full of your own whack homespun modern controls bullshit to sling back at longtime Street Fighter players, and briefly make them just as confused as you are all the time. Like, let's say I put myself in burnout for the 50th round in a row because I have an empty void where this part of my brain should be. At this point, even if I block attacks, I take chip damage from them, which I can die from, and because I lose access to fancy drive moves on my own, I have no good option to counter that terrifying drive impact attack. But wait a second, I actually do, because I'm modern. I simply smash that one-click super button to flip the situation around. And folks, no matter how many times this happens, it never gets old to me. But wait, am I really having fun online in a fighting game? Yes, because Street Fighter 6 is a game where online play is often actually good, rather than being some kind of unspeakable cosmic horror that shares the same name and face as the game I love. Because in Smash and other games with delay-based netcode, even just the experience of moving your character is completely different when the internet is involved. Join an online Smash Ultimate tournament and fight someone a good distance away, and you'll often find yourself suffering through literally 10 or more frames of extra input lag, which literally transforms the game to the extent that you can't do anything even remotely interesting or fun. This is actually responsible for some of the worst gaming experiences I have ever had, and I say that having played Final Fantasy I on a Motorola flip phone. Yes, it was a thing, don't ask. Thankfully, Street Fighter 6 manages to avoid almost all of this pain by having good rollback netcode. Basically, online play and especially bad connections will always make reacting to stuff harder and introduce unavoidable weirdness into any game. But rollback is like a way to cleverly hide that weirdness when it comes to controlling your character, so it doesn't feel like you're moving through jelly all the time. The fact that in Street Fighter 6 I can practice in training mode and then hop online and feel like I'm playing the same video game is something that shocked me like a caveman discovering fire, and I can't wait to see rollback netcode come to Smash Bros in 2040. But wait, what if I told you there's actually a feature that is secretly even more important for the Street Fighter 6 ranked match experience? A feature that I want in every single multiplayer game from every genre right now. And that feature is the game face mechanic. You see, as any match loads, even in ranked play, you can hold the direction to make your character do funny faces, and these faces can switch between each other as fast as you want. And I don't just love this because it's a YouTube thumbnail machine that will define the Street Fighter 6 clickbait meta for years to come. No, the game face mechanic goes far deeper than that. And I am not even that unserious when I say it has doubled my enjoyment of online play. Cause listen, if I get obliterated from existence by some Ken mashing attacks online, in a different game, it might have made me a little bit cranky. But in Street Fighter 6 Ranked, a lot of the time, that is not just some Ken. That is now the Ken that I spammed the same funny face with for 5 seconds before the match started. He is now my comrade in arms, and I am honored to lose to him. Not only that, but also I get to hit this button to train against my opponent's character in Street Fighter 6's fancy training mode. And you ever have that thing where you think you hate a subject, but then you see a really amazing video or you read a great article and you realize it was one specific teacher you had who was so awful at their job that they made you think you hated something that was actually super awesome? Well, just like my high school chemistry teacher Mrs. L, Smash Ultimate's training mode feels laser focused on destroying every ounce of passion people have for a beautiful art. But then, Street Fighter 6's training mode is like watching Nile Red turn plastic gloves into hot sauce. It's the best thing you never knew you needed. So that's the true beauty of Street Fighter 6 to me. I'm fighting a Blanca and I lose to this annoying ball move, but then I can press a button and suddenly I'm instantly in training mode against that character, and I can easily make him do that move at random so I can learn everything about it. Often the counterplay isn't easy, and of course any fighting game will be a time commitment, but it just feels like Street Fighter 6 has a lot of respect for the time that you do decide to put in. There are tons of presets with helpful real-world training examples, The game itself visually shows you all its frame data in a way that's very intuitive and easy to understand, so you don't have to constantly Google it like a madman. And the in-game tutorials even teach you a ton of important knowledge that you need to solve problems. Which is great, because solving problems can actually be pretty fun, right? Just look at puzzle games, or like games in general. But of course, it's a delicate balance, because solving problems in a game can only be as fun as the tools you have to do it. To show you what I mean, let's try a similar training situation, but in Smash Ultimate instead of Street Fighter. And instead of dealing with Blanca, we're dealing with Minecraft Steve, building Minecraft walls over and over again. Now, Steve is the best character in the game, and this move is very, very evil, but let's say you want to improve against it to actually beat Steve players sometimes. Well, you have to straight up fight the game here to get good practice. There's no save states or input recording. You literally have to learn how to build walls quickly just so you can get into training mode, painstakingly mine, then build a wall and switch to the other controller. Then you get to practice for about half a second before you have to switch back to the first controller and start all over again. But if this were Street Fighter, I'd record it so I could press a button and have Steve build the wall in front of me automatically, letting me practice and experiment dozens of times faster. Now, fighting game players are definitely rolling their eyes right now because this input recording feature is standard in pretty much all fighting games nowadays. But really folks, don't take that for granted. Input recording for practice is something you never really see in any other genre, even though it's kind of just the best thing ever. Like imagine being able to easily train against specific ability angles or timings in an FPS or MOBA. I can dream, right? But I do get why things turned out like this. Because fighting games are built around these short but complex input sequences, being able to record them and play them back is extremely important. And it's the same exact way for platform fighters like Smash, which is why it's kind of interesting to me that no platform fighter has ever had an input recording feature, ever. None of them, to my knowledge. Seriously, I love platform fighters to death, but after playing Street Fighter 6, I can't help but see the complete lack of input recording as a massive blind spot of the genre. In fact, it's so bad that the only way to get an actual good practice experience in Smash is by modding it, which forces people to hack their switches. To go back to that first analogy with Smash being a fruit roll-up, this is just like the time that viral TikTok fruit roll-up life hack caused a severe shortage and spawned an illegal international fruit roll-up smuggling black market, with 2 Americans caught smuggling 375 pounds of fruit roll-ups into Israel. When consumer demand isn't being met, the market makes fruit roll-up smugglers of us all. And I mean it when I say a good training mode really does affect the entire game and meta. Just like Smash, Street Fighter 6 has some truly horrifying attacks. There is a near unreactable headbutt that goes across the whole screen and is safe on block. There is a counter that also beats grabs and also you get a full combo. There is a tall French woman who will become your new sleep paralysis demon. To stop this stuff from destroying you, it isn't a question. You absolutely must go to training mode and find counterplay. But remember, all the tools are there now to make that training mode an actual rewarding experience. In Street Fighter 6, strong moves are strong because they're balanced around the skill cap and full usage of game mechanics like parries and drive impact. A lot of these moves look broken at first, but once you learn the counterplay, they simply become useful parts of a character's kit that you're always meant to consider when fighting them. Meanwhile in Smash, often strong moves are strong in that healthy way, but also sometimes they're strong because Sonic spins in his games, so let's make him spin in Smash too, and oops, 75% of the cast is now completely invalidated. Or like, Steve swings his axe in Minecraft, so let's make it so that if you hold the button, you can keep swinging, just like Minecraft, and oh no. Now, I don't want to be too hard on my favorite video game, because as I've said, on one hand, I do actually love how Smash is sort of the Wild West in terms of game design. At least in the modern fighting game era, because I am deeply afraid of what goes down in Marvel vs. Capcom. But sometimes, a couple rules to keep things from getting out of hand are very refreshing. Street Fighter has tons of those rules, it is obsessed with them, and you have to learn them to a degree that feels very confusing at first, coming from Smash or honestly most games. Like in Street Fighter, if you block someone's attack but they get to move first, they can't just grab you for free while you're stuck blocking. The game makes them wait for a bit so that situation isn't checkmate. No matter what, you still get to pick rock, paper, or scissors. Well, if we look at that situation in Smash, you also have 3 options to choose from here. Lose, lose, and I lied, there are only 2 options. Because in Smash, if it looks like you can do something, you probably can, rules be damned. So yeah, big adjustment for me and any Smash player coming to Street Fighter, a game where rules are everywhere but they serve a purpose. I'll put a few more of these rules up on the screen as examples. They're all very obvious for serious veterans, and they are communicated well in the game itself, but for me it's definitely still a work in progress to make them feel natural. Still, all I can say to my fellow Smash players here is, it could be worse, you know? Cause yeah, there are tons of rules to memorize, but imagine trying to learn it the other way around. Like I was playing Smash with a fighting game friend once, and he was getting frustrated because I kept grabbing him out of his jump, which can never happen in Street Fighter except with specific moves. He kept saying stuff like, but jump beats grab. How come you're allowed to do that when I guessed right? And I could only shed a tear for this poor, innocent man who was still looking for rules like that in Smash Ultimate's game design. In fact, I imagine that coming to Smash as a Street Fighter player is kinda like coming to America as a European and finding out we sell guns at Walmart. And that actually gives Smash players a good deal here. See, I do think that, with time and practice, a lot of skills like mixing up your attacks and watching your opponents do transfer between Smash and Street Fighter. But going in one of those directions will make you think, ooh, this training mode is really cool, while going in the other direction will make you contemplate your existence in an uncaring universe. Well, I'll always love Smash Ultimate. At the end of the day, it is a lot of fun once you learn to survive its insanity, but if I want some actual rules once in a while, I've got a great accessible game now that has them, and I can still put gloves on my character's face. And who knows, maybe some Street Fighter players do have intrusive thoughts like, what if there was no combo scaling, or what if Dalsim had no hurt boxes on his arms? And in that case, we got you covered. So yes, Smash and Street Fighter are very different. Now, are they as different as people think? Also yes, but that's part of the fun. Though, we are forgetting the elephant in the room here, right? Cause the beauty of Smash is that it's an actual competitive game, but at the same time, you and your fellow tryhards can also play 2 AM free-for-alls where Mario and Yoshi have lightsaber battles. Well, it's actually sorta similar for Street Fighter fans, but they get their fix by playing weird shit from the 90s like that one game where you can fight the bull. But what if I told you, you can now get run over by a bull within Street Fighter? Finally, a fighting game for Smash players. This is Extreme Battle, and I gotta say, as a certified stupid mode enjoyer, it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot of fun. My personal favorite Extreme Battle rule set is this one, Rules and Regulations, where health doesn't matter and the only way to win is by completing a series of pointless, randomly assigned objectives. So sorta like work or school, but it's an option you can turn on rather than a perpetual soul-crushing state of being. In this mode, I once turned a loss into a draw by jumping in place for 20 seconds so they couldn't grab me. Finally, the video game.
He's just like, I can't throw you.
Yeah, why? Extreme Battle is truly awful in all the right ways to make it fun, and I couldn't ask for anything more. Oh, and I almost forgot about the most important mode. You see, the absolute best mode of Street Fighter 6 for any new player is Rooflemonger. Okay, so I lied, this is not a mode, it's actually a guy who made this video. It is exactly 1 hour of all the info I needed to actually feel like I was playing Street Fighter, rather than being emotionally destroyed by it. And I'm proud to say that with that video's help, I was finally able to reach Platinum rank on Logitech Gaming Mouse Modern Controls Luke. So, in the end, is it worth it to get Street Fighter 6 if you have no idea what the hell is going on and this image looks like a nuclear launch code to you? Well, I say do it, because now we get to go on a journey. We get to start hating stupid moves that people have hated for 32 years, and with any luck, we'll hate them for the next 32 years. It is this cycle of abundantly flowing salty tears that powers any much-loved fighting game series, and it's always looking for new victims to gaslight into thinking they're having fun. But luckily for us, thinking you're having fun is probably the same thing as having fun, I think. I'm not a psychologist. Anyway, I'm happy to say that Street Fighter 6 is a great entry point to the series, and I've only felt welcomed into the community's classic pastimes such as cyberbullying jury players. I can't recommend this game enough, as a breath of fresh air and one of the best ways to legally punch people. Finally, real quick, why not join the Street Fighter channel of our Discord server, which is a no-judgment zone for all confused, serious newcomers. And if you're a Street Fighter veteran, we'd also very much appreciate having you, because right now our best player is this one Diamond Blanca who keeps kicking our asses, and if it keeps happening, I will lose my sanity. This is a cry for help. Someone please beat this Diamond Blanca or teach us how. So thanks for watching, Street Fight that subscribe button, now go out there and make some silly faces.
Nobody ever got strong without losing. Don't lose hope.